G'day. Hope you guys are having a good one. So yeah, this is Devlog number 2. And I've just had to do a little bit of editing of some of my code because it turns out that it was not broken, but one of the features that I thought I had fixed, I actually saw it commented out, then I uncommitted it, and then wasn't actually working. And then it caused a couple game-breaking bugs, and I'm like, oh, nuts. So I ended up having to fix that just now. But otherwise, everything's looking pretty good so far. So what? I've added now a ground spawner using a pretty basic instance randomizer. And what I have here is... Okay, so I've got a score, which brings platforms down now, so it's not stationary. And then I've got timers, I've got a high score and a score, which is pretty good. So you've now got a purpose to play, I guess. And ignore debug, that's just so I know that the score is working, although it does display in the game, but in case I do have to hide that, it's still helpful. And anyway, here I've just got a spawn timer, which if you guys can't read, I'll zoom in. Basically what this is when the spawn timer is is less than or equal to 0, it effectively spawns within a width, I guess, and the width is 700. This is like arbitrary numbers at the moment. Although it's 700 now, it may change later. I'm still trying to find, it's not looking entirely where I want it to look, at least in the end, so this is still MVP I'm going for at the moment, but I may decrease this and I may increase the size of the platforms. I do think the platforms are too small and need to be larger, and there's definitely a bit more that I need to work with, but you'll see that in a minute. And then all it's doing is just spawning in spawn place. I ended up having to create a variable called spawn place because I'm adding enemies in my game. This was a bit of a tricky one where, like, how will we add, we being me, and I had my mate on the side who was also working on his game, and you know, we're doing a little bit of, you know, back and forth trying to figure out how to get this to work. And because I had platforms going down, which is good. That's like, I guess, the most basic MVP. I effectively had made my own version of Doodle Jump, albeit a very dumbed down basic, but still playable Doodle Jump. And yeah, so what I had here was, oh yeah, and I wanted to have enemies in my game. That's a pretty major aspect to my game. In terms of what I want to create. It's not a necessity, but it's something that would develop my game and make it different to games such as Doodle Jump. And I'm like, oh, but how in the world am I going to have enemies existing in like the same places the platforms? Because it's one thing making platforms randomly spawn, it's another thing making enemies randomly spawn, but it's a whole nother thing trying to make the enemies spawning on the platforms. I mean, I could do both of those two things. I could have enemies spawning, I could also have them just go randomly around the place and not even falling down. But then I'm just like, how the fuck am I going to have these enemies spawning on the platforms and then, you know, staying on the platforms? Now, it's still very basic version of everything at the moment, so don't expect much. It's a bit buggy. There's still quite a lot of issues, and I'm going to be, you know, fine-tuning it. I think it is due by the end of... Is it this week? Yep, it's due by the end of this week. I definitely knew that, so I'm actually going to have to speed through all this this week. But yeah, so that's that. I effectively did this by, instead of having... Originally this was not... I didn't have this line of code, it was more just random within here. I decided to add a variable, which effectively mean instead of having it just be the platform spawn randomly, I'm setting a variable that is the randomized thing, which means now instead of it just being here, these both are effectively spawned on the exact same point, which sounds pretty straightforward, but it, you know, I don't really have any tutorials or reference to work with here, so trying to come up with this stuff as a non-coder is a bit complex. I struggled with that one for about like 15 minutes, 30 minutes. And anyway, so I had this having enemy chance, which is effectively, I don't want enemies spawning on every platform, so, you know, effectively this means, boom, they're either going to be spawning or they're not, and it's effectively half. I have run into issues where I can add extra numbers here to make it like a 1 in 3 chance, 1 in 4 chance, stuff like that. The only issue is there is either something wrong with my code, or just so if anybody knows the answer, then, you know, hit me up. But when I add an extra number onto this, it doesn't become a 1 in 3 chance. It becomes like a 1 in 10 chance, and I don't know why. Maybe not 1 in 10, I'm just giving you a random number there, but it does significantly change, and I will show you. But, yep, so I've got all this. I've also added score. Now, like I'm, you know, constantly saying, this is all, you know, subject to change here. Object spawner. Ah, yes, this was code that I'm gonna get rid of at some point. So I've got basic AI, which I had my friend help me with, and it effectively is just pretty basic. It has a chase and a idle. Anyway, yeah, so I've added, yeah, so I've changed the look of the game a little bit. Here's the starting platform, and the platforms disappear. It's quite buggy. These guys spaz out a little bit. They need a bit of work. You can go up the platforms, but sometimes it's a bit glitchy. So if you go on a weird angle, it's kind of, there's like, what do you call it? A force, yeah, so it like pulls you up weirdly. So instead of you smooth jumping, you kind of need, I can't remember what I was doing to fix that. I'll have to rewatch. I had a little chat with my teacher about it, but I kind of need to decide whether I want the ability to go through platforms or not. That's like the main thing, and then if I do, because sometimes it jumps through fine, and I'm like, yay. And so what I can tell at the moment is it's how the character's jumping in. Have the characters jumped in from the one underneath? So there's a set period of, I guess, height from where the jump is, where it jumps up naturally through. But then if I'm on an angle or jumped from a bigger height, I guess, than whatever this number is, it kind of phases weirdly and pulls you up as opposed to you jumping through it. That's, you know, needs a fix. Another thing you'll note, well, should be able to see, is we've got a score and a high score. This is pretty good. So this means that your high score will be kept, but I don't think, I don't know how I'd do it, but I possibly just won't be able to. But when you quit the game, your high score is reset. There is no log. And I don't know if you can log, so there's that. So you get, if you keep playing, for example, 30 minutes, you'll still be able to see your high score of that 30 minutes, but as soon as you quit the game, you're going to lose it. You can always save it manually, but you just won't have access to it once it quits, because all that, the save stuff is gone. Now, I will need to increase the size of these platforms. They're quite small, and I find for like a doodle jump kind of game is good, but for something having enemies, you can't like sneak around the enemies as much, and the enemies are quite, yeah. So that surprisingly didn't reset. That's usually meant to reset. Okay, the high score also didn't save, so I'm gonna have to work on that. I had this working before, but apparently it must have not. So yeah, so it normally resets. I have to figure out, that was a bit of a bug then, huh? As you have noticed, What was I gonna say? I've actually lost my train of thought. Oh, that guy jumped off, weirdly. Yeah, so I can't remember what I was gonna say. It was like relatively important and I was working up to it and I've forgotten. But yeah, so what was I saying prior then? We got the high score. The character can fall down and generally dies. So I don't know what that was. I think, oh yeah, I remember now. So two things. First things first, we've got the platforms have what'd you call it? They increase speed through time. So if you guys want to know the actual math behind it, it's your score. As your score increases, okay, no, so every frame your score increases. I think it's every frame, if I recall correctly. And then that score is just is like the definition of how far you've gotten, and then that was just like the easiest way of doing it. And then the speed of the platforms is your score divided by 5,000, which is a massive number, but I'll tell you now, I think 5,000 is necessity, because if you want to be playing, going through this for more than like, you know, I guess, what would you call it? More than like 5 minutes, it's gonna get hard and it ramps up. Now, I've probably been jumping through this for about 3 minutes now. As you can see, it is getting significantly faster. Now I need to add a way for you to die and kill the things. Now I think I'm gonna leave you dying to the enemies to be like one of the last things I add if I add it in my MVP. I don't think that's really a necessity. Now adding the ability to kill the enemies is definitely a necessity, because that's going to bridge out to some of the things I plan to add later. But yeah, so I do have a double jump. That was half because I think it suits the game, but also because some of these platforms are too wide for you to reach, so I had to double jump. These platforms are taking a minute to spawn sometimes, it's getting a bit hard. Which is reset when you touch the ground. Yeah, it's pretty fun though, I must say. So one piece of advice I've gotten, it's gonna be a long devlog, would be potentially adding stages. So instead of it just being a constant increase in difficulty, something that would also get you good would be adding stages, and these stages being, you know, they move all at the speed within that stage. So you gotta reach a score of for example, 1,000, and you go to stage 2, and stage 2 is when I think I managed to look. I somehow pulled another jump out of my ass. Weird. And stage 2 is when that, yeah, I died then. So for some reason I don't get killed and it keeps going up. Infinite score, I'm kind of cheating my own game. But yeah, I don't actually know what's causing that. I'll have to figure that out probably outside of this recording, because otherwise this recording is going to be like 20 minutes long. It's already 15 minutes long almost already, so it's a lot longer than I thought. And I will delete a lot of this extra stuff when, you know, time comes, but I think for now this is like the basic look of what I want. Now, as I showed last time, I do have extra characters that I will swap over, but I'm going for quite vibrant, easy to see stuff right now, just so it's easy for me to appear. Like I can add extra stuff, but it might, you know, this is quite placeholder, and placeholder, you know, vibrant, easy to see is a bit nicer for me when testing, as opposed to something that sort of matches, because I want a lot of the colors to match and be quite muddy and hard and gritty, but that would be a bit tricky when trying to test my games. So having vibrant pink and like, you know, a big test dummy here, that would be something too. That's just easier for me at the time, man. So I will probably spend some of today, considering I have most of today off, working on my game, and then potentially adding some more characters, not necessarily more characters, but improving the visual style of the characters, and stuff like that. Anyway, hope you guys are all having a good one, and hopefully you guys have liked what I've shown, and let me know what you think. If there's anything you would like to see or be added, and if it fits within my MVP, I can maybe potentially add that. That'd be pretty cool. Also, if there's anything that you do, if you guys are, you know GML, let me know. If there's any of these issues that you see that have popped up in my game, and you know the fix to it, do let me know, because I have run into the issue of GML surprisingly doesn't have many tutorials, so I've been struggling to find tutorials that fit my needs. There's quite a couple tutorials, but a lot of them like top down and stuff like that. For these sorts of games that I'm making, there's not many GML tutorials, and a lot of the ones that sort of suit are like, you know, 2006, 2009, and I'm just like, the whole of Game Maker has changed. It's one, I can't find half the stuff you're trying to show me, and two, some of the stuff just doesn't work anymore. So regardless, there's a bit of a struggle. GML is a bit tricky, Game Maker is a bit of a struggle, but regardless, have a good one. Thank you guys all for watching, and I hope this has been informative. Catch you next one. See ya.